Everything you know about Buddha is wrong. Don't be fooled, Buddha was a conqueror. Not very distinct from Alexander the Great, and modern spirituality lies to you. What is it that truly moves you? Not the polite, surface-level wants society tells you to have, but the deep, silent, and primal engine within that refuses to be domesticated. This is Zeta's secret. For this video, it's Buddha's secret. What inspired Buddha to reject his princely life in search of enlightenment? What motivated him to sit on the immovable spot for 49 days and nights and overcome all the demons of the underworld or die trying? What motivated Alexander the Great to conquer the entire known world and overcome all the tragedies and adversity associated with that? What inspired Magellan to explore the ends of the earth at the cost of his own life and that of his crew? Tremendous impulse. A will to power so vast most of us mortals can't comprehend it. And spiritual folk completely miss this these days. The fact that Buddha and Alexander the Great were cut from the same cloth. Their main instinct was to conquer. Yes, Buddha learned to conquer himself through non-attachment and non-resistance and awakening, but he never would have founded the Buddhist path if he didn't have the burning will to become superior to this world. This is the nature of higher men that is so often shunned and misunderstood in the modern day, is higher men go forward. And this heroic impulse used to be universally celebrated. In fact, heroism and victory were the foundation of all true spiritual practice in the ancient world. What we practice nowadays is feminine philosophy. This is Zeta's raw philosophy. This is the core of the matter, the fundamental schism between the modern spiritual marketplace and the ancient, unforgiving path of actualization. The modern world sells you comfort. It packages enlightenment as a state of perpetual peace, a gentle dissolving into a cosmic love. But this is a lie woven to placate the masses. The original quest was never about comfort, it was about conquest. Look at the archetypes history remembers not for their peace, but for their unimaginable will. The prince who walked away from every earthly pleasure not to find happiness, but to wage a war against the very nature of suffering itself. The general who looked at the known world and saw not borders, but a challenge to his essence. They were not looking for a hug from the universe, they were looking to wrestle with it and win. This is the nature of the higher man that has been systematically scrubbed from our collective memory. It is the heroic impulse, the will to power that Nietzsche identified as the very drive of life itself. It is not about dominating others, but about the absolute domination of one's own limitations. Julius Evola saw it clearly in his doctrine of awakening, distinguishing true awakening, a fierce, elevated clarity, from the passive nothingness often mistaken for it. One is a ascent to the peaks, the other is a descent into the fog. The Zeta understands this instinctively. For him, the problem of modern spirituality's emptiness is irrelevant. He does not seek it. His path is not one of seeking external validation or ethereal feelings. His compulsion is internal, a constant, driving need to sharpen his edge against the whetstone of reality. He doesn't want to transcend the world by leaving it. He seeks to conquer it by mastering his presence within it. He is the dark, aggressive shadow of the Sigma. Where the Sigma may operate outside the system, the Zeta seeks to understand the system so completely that he can bend its very fabric to his will. His meditation is not an escape, it is a strategic recalibration. His enlightenment is not a soft glow, it is a forged blade. And his spirit is not meek, it is a silent, gathering storm. You know that feeling when everyone around you seems satisfied with crumbs while you're starving for the whole meal? That restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. questioning everything they call normal? You're not broken. You're waking up. Modern spirituality sold you a lie wrapped in silk ribbons and meditation cushions. They told you to find peace through surrender, to dissolve your ego into cosmic soup, to become nothing so you can be everything. But here's the brutal truth they won't tell you. Enlightenment without conquest is just sophisticated escapism. The ancient masters they quote, Buddha, Christ, the Taoist sages, they weren't peaceful monks sitting in lotus position waiting for nirvana to fall from the sky. They were warriors of consciousness. Buddha didn't abandon his palace to become a beggar. He abandoned comfort to become a conqueror of the mind. The difference? Intent. Zetas instinctively reject this watered-down spirituality because something deeper calls them. While others meditate to escape their problems, you meditate to sharpen your edge inside them. Marcus Aurelius didn't write his meditations from a mountaintop monastery. He wrote them in the dirt and blood of military campaigns. They were moved by a raw center, a will that would not settle for the small life. Buddha sat unmoving not to vanish, but to master the world within. Alexander pushed forward not for trophies, but to test his limits against the map. Magellan traded comfort for the edge of the unknown, because the impulse to conquer was louder than the comfort of staying. These acts are not accidents, they are signatures of an organism wired to expand. Studies on grit by Angela Duckworth, 2016, show perseverance and sustained interest predict long-term achievement. Call it science catching up to an old intuition. This is not sentiment, it is mechanism. Will is trained like a muscle, it breaks and rebuilds under load. For Zetas, the problem is irrelevant. They respond before they deliberate, instinct before counsel. Modern spirituality has traded the hammer for velvet, and the result is a generation comfortable with nice feelings, but starved of the spine to act. The feminine approach to transcendence seeks harmony, dissolution, becoming one with everything. But you sense something they missed. True power doesn't come from melting into the universe, it comes from forging yourself into something the universe itself must acknowledge. That burning you feel? That's not anger. That's your soul rejecting counterfeit enlightenment. Do you plan your moves, or do you wait for life to hand you a script you hate? He studies the map before he fights. Strategy is not some exotic art, it is the quiet work that separates a will from a whim. Sun Tzu teaches to win without wasting blood, Robert Greene shows power moves as patterns, Machiavelli reminds that results matter more than applause, Stoicism says endure, then act. Strategy is timing, patience, and the refusal to be loud when silence wins. Modern talk culture mistakes noise for strategy. Do you know when to wait and when to strike? Studies on deliberate practice, Anders Ericsson 1993, found mastery needs focused repetition, not vague intention. This applies to the inner game as much as the outer. Strategy is micro-habits stacked into orders of magnitude. It is rehearsing small defeats so you refuse collapse under big ones. He sizes the battlefield, removes distractions, trains the senses to notice tiny openings. For Zetas, planning is instinct. They sharpen maps while others binge opinions. For the Zeta, the internal world is not a library for endless study, it is a forge. His philosophy is not debated, it is lived. He understands a fundamental truth that the Stoics carved into stone centuries ago. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca warned of the man who suffers eternally from anticipating tragedies that never arrive. The Zeta ceases this anticipation. He does not waste energy forecasting storms. He builds an inner citadel so strong that when the storm comes, and it always comes, it finds him unmoved and ready. His instinct to act is not mere impulsivity. It is a refined calculus happening in the depths of his psyche, far beyond the slow, clumsy language of conscious thought. He operates from what modern psychology might call System 1 processing, the automatic, intuitive mind. But he has trained it, sharpened it into a razor. He has integrated the lessons of Sun Tzu not as theory, but as instinct. Victorious warriors win first and then go to war, while defeated warriors go to war first and then seek to win. The Zeta's battles are won in the silence of his preparation long before the first move is ever made. You practice silence as a tool. You measure wins by internal counters, not likes. The fantasy that constant feeling, endless validation, and soft rituals will forge greatness is false. Build rhythms. Choose solitude as a workshop. Test yourself in small, brutal ways. Strategy lives in the quiet places where you refuse to be ordinary. The Zeta does not operate on motivation. Motivation is a fickle, external ghost that flees at the first sign of resistance. His engine is compulsion, an internal, non-negotiable drive to build, to think, to evolve. This is the will to power in its purest biological form, the same impulse that drove ancient explorers to sail off the map and philosophers to stare into the abyss. It is not a choice. It is a fact of his existence as fundamental as breathing. Modern spirituality often preaches a dissolution of the ego, a blending into a soft, forgiving oneness. But the Zeta's path is one of ruthless ego refinement. He is not trying to kill his ego, he is trying to temper it into an unbreakable tool, a diamond-edged will that can cut through the illusions of the world. He understands the subtle but profound difference between self-annihilation and self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal to disappear. He did it to fortify his command post. He wrote not to erase himself, but to become a more effective instrument of his own purpose. This is a darker, more aggressive shadow work. It is not about holding space for your inner child, it is about forging an inner general. The Zeta willingly engages with his own darkness, not to be consumed by it, but to harness its power. He knows that to deny the shadow is to live half a life, perpetually afraid of his own potential. He integrates it, making the darkness a part of his arsenal. His stillness is not passive, it is a predator's patience. His focus is not gentle, it is a laser. He rejects the modernized, feminine philosophy that prioritizes feeling good over being powerful. For him, the goal is not comfort but capability. He seeks the strength to endure reality, not a fantasy to escape it. He stands like a monolith in the river of chaos, not resisting the current, but understanding its flow so completely that he can use its force. He doesn't ask the universe for a lighter load, he forges a stronger back. His entire existence is a silent, unwavering testament to one principle. While others seek to be saved, he is committed to being the savior of himself and of whatever domain he chooses to master. Do you sleep like a king or scroll like a beggar? Studies on sleep by Matthew Walker, 2017, show sleep rebuilds cognition and will. It is not indulgence, it is infrastructure. He fasts, not to be ascetic for show, but to reset appetite and sharpen decision. He lifts, not for vanity, but to make his skeleton a tool of will. Cold baths, breath holds, timed hunger. These are not rituals of suffering, they are tests that reveal whether you stand or fold. If you only chase comfort, you will rust. Will you make your flesh proof of your why? You start with small cruelties to yourself. 10 minutes longer, one more rep, one night earlier to bed. You practice these tiny violences against ease. They compound into an unshakable posture. He does this because victory lives in the body first, then in speech, and finally in the world. Why do you build? Is it for the eyes of others, for the applause that fades as quickly as it comes? Or is it for the silent, uncompromising satisfaction of seeing your will made manifest in the world? The Zeta is an architect, and his blueprint is drawn in the ink of his own internal code. He does not build for an audience. The validation of the crowd is a currency he deems worthless. His compulsion to create, to structure, to evolve, it springs from a source so deep that external recognition cannot even hope to touch it. This is the essence of true sovereignty. Marcus Aurelius, ruling an empire from a tent, understood this. The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts. The Zeta's happiness, his power, depends on the quality of his actions, judged only by his own ruthless standard. While others are loudly proclaiming their goals, he has already completed the first 3 steps. His energy is not spent on announcements, it is conserved for execution. He understands that power is often best exercised from the shadows, away from the glare of scrutiny and the poison of envy. He is the unseen architect of his life, and the structure he builds is not for show. It is for survival. It is for dominance. It is a monument to the truth that the only empire worth conquering is the one within, and from that conquest, all other victories flow. Sun Tzu taught to know friends as terrain, Robert Greene mapped power as patterns of allegiance. Most tribes today trade depth for impressions, and that corrodes the soul. Will you choose edges over applause? Will you learn to recruit the few who sharpen you? Studies on social capital by Putnam, 2000, found that real civic strength comes from tight bonds, not loose signals. This is practical, not sentimental. You keep companions who tell truth, not comfort. You reject the theater of network size. Most communities online are echo chambers that eat resolve. He knows solitude breeds clarity, but solitude without comrades become brittle. Who gave them the right to write your story? The marketers, the gurus, the voices that swarm the digital ether. Why do their narratives hold any power over your inner world? The Zeta has executed a silent, bloodless coup against these external authors. He has seized the pen. His philosophy is not found in a best-selling book or a trending podcast. It is etched into his nervous system through repeated action and conscious suffering. He operates from a personal code, a constitution written for an audience of one. This is the ultimate application of Stoic principle, to live a life that is your own. Seneca argued that we are never more possessed than when we think we are following our own will, all while being puppeteered by societal expectation. The Zeta cuts these strings. He doesn't rebel for the sake of image. He simply withdraws his consent from games he never agreed to play. This is a profound psychological shift. Cognitive behavioral therapy tells us that our thoughts shape our reality. The Zeta takes this a step further. He architects his thoughts. He is the cartographer of his own mind, ruthlessly redrawing the maps others tried to sell him. He recognizes that most of the world's suffering is a product of borrowed beliefs, of internalizing a script that was never meant for you. His edge comes from this total intellectual independence. He doesn't waste energy fighting external narratives. He simply builds a better, more compelling internal one. He is, as the ancients urged, a fortress unto himself. The gates are locked not out of fear, but out of discernment. Not every thought deserves entry. Not every opinion warrants a hearing. This is why he seems so impenetrable, so unshakable. You cannot destabilize a man who is the sole source of his own validation. His center of gravity is located deep within, far from the reach of criticism or praise. He doesn't need to be right in the eyes of others, he only needs to be aligned with his own code. This isn't arrogance. It is sovereignty. While others are frantically trying to manage their brand, he is quietly building his legacy. He understands the most powerful statement you can make is a life lived entirely on your own terms. He isn't just playing the game, he wrote the rules. Do you treat your pain like an enemy, or do you learn to grind it into the blade you carry? You already know which one keeps you soft. He does not escape pain, he repurposes it. Pain becomes raw material, not catastrophe. Viktor Frankl argued that meaning can be found in suffering, that suffering without meaning is needless waste. Deci and Ryan, 2000, show autonomy and competence fuel intrinsic motivation. The modern luxury of avoiding pain actually erodes the engine that makes greatness possible. For Zetas, discomfort is input. They do not romanticize pain, they mechanize it, they set conditions where small controlled suffering creates growth. Will you engineer your own crucible? Stress inoculation training by Meichenbaum, 1985, shows that incremental, simulated stress builds resilience. This is not mysticism, it is rehearsal. He chooses voluntary hardships, cold exposure, deliberate fasts, timed isolation. Try mindful breathing, sit in sauna, and try micro-failures that teach how to stand when the world presses. Most people confuse comfort with safety, and that confusion is why their resolve rots. You convert suffering into skill by design. You ritualize the hard thing until it becomes ordinary, then you raise the bar. He practices suffering like craft. You, if you choose, can turn your scars into instruments. The alchemy is simple. Endure with purpose, refine without bitterness, and let hardship be the currency that buys you freedom. When the moment arrives, do you hesitate? Do you weigh the opinions of ghosts while the opportunity slips through your fingers? For the Zeta, there is no gap between knowing and doing. His thought is action. His action is final. Modern life trains you to overthink, to analyze every potential outcome until the weight of possibility crushes your initiative. The Zeta has surgically removed this hesitation. He operates on a different frequency, one of primal certainty. This isn't recklessness, it is the culmination of a psyche so trained and trusted that its first impulse is often its most correct. He embodies the essence of Sun Tzu's wisdom: opportunities multiply as they are seized. He knows that victory does not always go to the strongest or the smartest, but to the one who acts with decisive force while others are still deliberating. His instinct is his most refined weapon. It is a compass calibrated not by external maps, but by the magnetic north of his own hardened will. He has done the internal work so that in the critical moment he doesn't need to think. He simply knows. This is the will to power in its purest, most immediate form, a biological imperative to impose his reality onto the world. Nietzsche saw this not as brutality, but as the fundamental drive of all life, to overcome, to expand, to express its strength. While modern spirituality often preaches passive acceptance, the Zeta practices ruthless engagement. He does not wait for a sign from the universe. He is the sign. He does not seek permission. He imposes a new reality. A problem is not a barrier, it is the raw material for his next creation. His mind does not recognize obstacles. It only recognizes solutions waiting to be executed. This is why he seems so unnervingly effective. He moves with the certainty of a predator, not because he is cruel, but because he is utterly aligned with his purpose. The noise of doubt, the fear of judgment, these are languages he no longer speaks. His world is built on verbs, not nouns. On action, not identity. He understands that the universe does not respect your plans. It respects your actions. And so he acts instinctively, decisively, and without apology. He doesn't conquer the world. He simply moves through it with the unshakable certainty that he is the storm. Do you blame your weak hours on willpower, or will you admit you live inside a room designed to ruin you? You feel it in your gut. The wrong chair, the bright screen, the habit that quietly eats your day. He does not pray for more resolve. He changes the stage. Kahneman shows context steers choice. Thaler and Sunstein discovered small nudges bend behavior. This is not clever theory, it is basic battlefield craft. Most people treat willpower like a badge and ignore that strength is also architectural, that denial produces brittle men who snap under mild pressure. Will you keep fighting the same traps, or will you rewire the world so fighting becomes unnecessary? He removes the easy exits. He makes distraction costly and work effortless. You swap tempting shortcuts for deliberate rubrics. You put your phone in a different city, you put the book by the bed, you make the first step stupidly simple so the second becomes inevitable. He treats environment like ammunition, not decoration. He plants triggers that pull him toward action, not traps that lull him into pause. Studies on choice architecture show tiny changes yield massive results. This is strategy, not morality theater. If you redesign only your intentions, you are still playing into the room's rules. You will feel petty at first, like moving furniture to train an emperor, then you will notice your edges sharpening without drama. This is quiet warcraft. This is Zeta work. Shape the world, and the world will shape you into the man who finally matches the voice inside. What do you see when you look at a wall? Do you see a barrier, a finality, a reason to stop? Or do you see a tool, an invitation to find a new way over, under, through, or around it? The Zeta sees only the latter. For him, adversity is not a setback. It is the primary fuel for his evolution. The modern world sells a lie, that a good life is a smooth life, free from friction and pain. This pursuit of comfort is a trap, a cage lined with velvet. The Zeta instinctively rejects this. He understands the core stoic tenet that Marcus Aurelius lived by: the obstacle in the path becomes the path. Forget the obstacle. The impediment to action advances action. A challenge is not a deviation from the path, it is the path. It is the very thing that forges the strength required to walk it. This is why he is so formidable. He has decoupled his internal state from external circumstances. Most people die chasing applause that fades before their coffin closes. How do you move through a world obsessed with image, with noise, with the desperate performance of power? You become a ghost. You master the art of influence without the burden of visibility. The Zeta understands that true power often resides not in the spotlight, but in the shadows it casts. He has no interest in the gilded throne everyone else is fighting over. He is building his own throne in a room no one else knows exists. His influence is not loud, it is gravitational. He moves through systems and social structures not as a participant seeking validation, but as an observer gathering intelligence. He embodies the strategic patience of Sun Tzu. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. For the Zeta, the enemy is mediocrity and the loss of autonomy. He subdues them by refusing to play their game. This is not manipulation in the petty sense. It is a higher form of operational efficiency. He understands the deep currents of human motivation, the insecurities, the desires, the unspoken rules. He sees the levers of power that most are oblivious to. And because he is not emotionally invested in the outcome of any single interaction, he can pull these levers with a surgeon's precision. His compulsion is not to control others, but to control his own position within any given dynamic absolutely. He is the ghost in the machine of society. He uses the system's own energy against it, redirecting flows of power and information to his own ends, all while leaving no fingerprints. His strength is paradoxical. It increases by his selective absence. The less he is seen, the more his presence is felt. The less he says, the more his words carry weight. This is the final refinement of the Stoic ideal, to be unmoved by the chaos of externals because you understand its mechanics so intimately that you can navigate it blindfolded. He doesn't resist the current. He studies it, and then he builds a dam when no one is looking. His power is not taken. It is quietly, irresistibly assumed. He wins the war before the first shot is even fired, because he was the one who decided what war was worth fighting in the first place. He is the silent architect of reality, and the world is his blueprint. Where does it all lead? This relentless refinement, this cold forging in the dark, what is the final product? It is not a destination you arrive at. It is a crown you realize you have been wearing all along. The Zeta's journey culminates in this profound realization. His kingdom was never external. It is the unassailable territory of his own mastered nature. The modern world screams that victory is something to be displayed, a trophy to be won and placed on a shelf for others to admire. This is the loser's game. The true victory, the only one that matters, is silent and invisible. It is the total alignment of your actions with your deepest essence. It is the peace that comes not from the absence of conflict, but from the absolute certainty that you can handle any conflict that comes. This is the Stoic's eudaimonia, the flourishing that comes from living in accordance with your highest nature. The Zeta understands that the true conquest is of the self. All other dominions are merely echoes of this primary, fundamental victory. He has not been building an empire to rule over others. He has been sculpting a self that cannot be ruled. His will is law. His focus is unbreakable. His inner citadel is impregnable. This is the ultimate power, to be so utterly complete in yourself that the world's chaos, opinions and temptations simply break against you like waves on a cliff. This is how a Buddha is born. Not through passive meditation, but through the active, violent conquest of his own attachments and fears. This is how a king is crowned, not by a ceremony, but by the daily ruthless act of ruling his own mind. The Zeta's entire existence is a coronation. Every disciplined choice is a jewel set into his crown. Every resisted temptation strengthens his throne. Thanks for watching.